Maria Louisa, this time we have to do it in English.
We do.
We
Let's
do.
try it out.
Well, that's always interesting. We could do it in Norwegian, Danish, because you are Danish.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from a small fisherman's village in the western part of Denmark, actually. But I live in Copenhagen now. Yeah, but I'm a
Okay.
small town girl.
How was it to grow up there?
Magical. Like, where I grew up, I want to say like uh, the main work there was people fishing or farming.
Mm.
So, like, very close to nature, very close to these wonderful, hardworking people. Um, and I'm so grateful to have experienced that in my childhood.
Okay. So your parents were the farmers or fishers, or?
Actually, my dad, he worked on boats for many, many years. He traveled with these big container ships for Maersk, as you might know, Maersk.
Mm. Mm.
And then he worked in the oil industry for many years. And my mom, she has worked with, she's like a care nurse, and
Mm.
has
Mm.
worked with that for many, many years. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
How was it? Did it mean that you grew up with your father quite often away on travels, or how was it?
I think that's such a good question because a lot of people ask me that, especially because I think nowadays that is rare. Like, I
Mm.
have this feeling that it doesn't happen too often. To me, it was just normal, you know?
Mm.
It was a wonderful time when he was there because he was able to be fully present. We would build things, or, he would be around all the time, which was so nice. And then he would be away for, like, in the beginning, when I was 1 week old, he traveled away for half a year. And that was how it started, like 6 months away and then 6 months home. And then 3 months away, 3 months home.
Mm.
And when he was there, it was great. When he wasn't there, my mom, my little brother, and I, now a dog, we were just hanging out. So it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. We have a Norwegian professor that talks about the other day, actually, when because at that time up in Lofoten,
Yeah.
they had every second day they had school or stayed at home.
Hmm.
Actually, I have to cut this out because it's it's such a long story. So let's just jump over to the other part. But this way of growing up and the place to grow up. What did that do to you? Because actually, what I was supposed to start the entire podcast with was as usual. What are you doing for a living?
Hmm.
So let's start there, and perhaps we go back to the
Yeah.
place afterwards. So what do you do for a living?
So, what do I do for a living? That is such a good and relevant question. And to me, it's um, it's fun how this is often the introduction also when we meet new people, right? Like, what do you do for a living? And to me right now, that is a little bit actually of a vulnerable question because I don't do a whole lot. uh, so I come from a background being creative. Actually, I've worked a lot with singing, being in my very young years, like working on musicals. And then I have a background in anthropology, and that is kind of studying the logic behind human action. So, why do we do what we do as people? And I want to say that is definitely not logical. We are not logical people. You can just see you have all the information about eating healthy, like why you don't smoke, like, but we still do it. So people are definitely not logical. So understanding why we do what we do in different settings, and how we can support one another to live, for me, a wonderful life and understand each other better. So that is my academic background, and with that foundation, I have traveled a lot, lived a lot in East Africa and Uganda, especially
Mm.
studying the children there living on the streets of the capital city, Kampala.
Mhm.
Um, and then I've worked in consultancy for 6.5, 7 years, um, working with headhunting, people development, psychometric testing, and so forth, really giving me, I want to say, more of a solid corporate um, foundation. And that was wonderful as well to have all these teachings. And then coming back to the question of what are you doing and why is it vulnerable to not do anything, is I worked myself too hard for too long, and I guess that has been a theme all my life. It has not been easy for me to focus on how I was doing. And I know maybe that's a cliche for many of us, but it is for me too. So at some point uh, during this work in a consultancy, I just felt myself become really sick. Like, I was so anxious. I had blood running out my nose 3, 4 times a day, lost my hair, I couldn't remember stuff. So I took a decision to say, this is not for me. Like, I don't want to be this person. And then I just tried my very best to trust that it would be okay to say stop, even though for me, and maybe for many others, it can be very difficult to surrender and be vulnerable in not being okay, especially in a society, both in Denmark, but I guess also in Norway as well, that is fast. You know, we have to do something to be someone. We have to be productive to feel our self-worth. And that has been the past year. I've almost been home a year now. That has been definitely my biggest work internally, to not build my self-worth on what I am doing. Yeah, that was a long
Wow.
story.
Yeah, yeah, and such a strong story. But I have to ask, because the distance between studying children and working with children in East Africa and going to work corporate with headhunting, that's quite different jobs, isn't it?
So different, and I really like that view, and I guess I know where you're going. So maybe I want to elaborate on why I did two so different things. What I found was working in Africa. One thing was studying these children, but I had been to East Africa, Tanzania and Kenya for several times. And what I saw for me was, I started out when I was very young, 21, in Africa. And I did this very classical volunteering. And I was actually volunteering with two Norwegian girls at a school. And I was teaching these children on this school who were 4, 5, 6 years. I was teaching them English.
Mm-hmm.
What I found was, what I was doing was definitely not helping anybody. And I paid a lot of money to go and volunteer in a school where I was not needed at all. They didn't even speak their own language, Swahili, yet, and then I was going to teach them English. And then I just came back and forth many times to Africa, and I wondered, like, is this the white savior girl inside of me that wants to do something good, but it's just not actually doing any good? And then the anthropologist slowly came into me, and I tried viewing myself in a different light, and then these wonderful people who are smart, strong, independent, in a different light. And I saw that a lot of this volunteering to me can do much more harm than it can do good. For instance, when you work in an orphanage and you are there for 3 months, you have these babies and toddlers, and they connect with you, and then you leave. You know, you leave, and then you're and I don't think that that is. And I'm gonna use a good Danish Norwegian word, bæredygtigt. I don't think it's sustainable. So what I found was, something that actually did work was building businesses. like supporting people with microloans, helping them build up a business. The thing about me is I don't know anything about business. Like, I know nothing about finances. I was very bad at math. I didn't almost pass it in gymnasium. So I knew very early on, after being in Africa, that if I wanted to do something that I thought would be actually beneficial, I had to know about business, because then I could support building businesses and actually supporting people in a bæredygtig manner in
Mm.
Uganda.
And that led you into this headhunting company.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I had so many wonderful teachings there. I really, really learned a lot. I'm still not perfect with finances at all, but I do think I understand some of the mechanics better, and I'm able to speak a language better
Mm.
definitely than I was before.
Mm.
Um, but what is tricky, has been tricky for me and maybe for others, is once you once you go into this corporate world or like money world, it's also very tempting, isn't it? It was for me. Like, you earn good money, like it's easy, it's comfortable, you become comfortable. And then another cliche coming up, Carl Andre, somewhere along the line, I lost my vision. I lost my vision of doing good because I became very centered around my own well being. And that is also very good. But to me, I lost it because I became too comfortable.
Mm. But still, it all came with too high a cost.
Yeah,
So you became sick, like you said.
I became sick. And
Yeah.
that was also on me, but it was a very good teaching that, and I know that some of us have been told so many times, but your body will definitely tell you. Uh, and it
I
did.
will.
And I'm very
Mm.
grateful. So, so coming back from that is very, very good journey.
Yeah. So what are you going to do now with all of these learnings from both sides, so to say?
I think for many of us, um, it is about like striking a balance, finding
Mm.
a balance where you take care of yourself and you feel comfortable also in your financial situation, while also being brave, daring yourself, putting yourself out there. Um, so what I am, uh, what I'm doing now is I'm building a program for women who have been late in life diagnosed with ADHD. And that is a big thing here in Denmark, at least, that we have these people. Um, and when you get this diagnosis, often in a late age, it's you get the diagnosis and maybe you get some medication, but then you're kind of left on your own and you still have all of these questions. So giving this community some support. And then I'm taking a postgraduate in psychedelic science,
Mm.
working with this range of possible medicines that can be found, supporting people in opening their hearts and their minds, and working with that. And then
Mm.
maybe also some corporate work, because I also find that very rewarding. But for now, I'm just feeling into what's going to happen. And I'm just so honored also being here with you, because I feel that this is you're such a solid person and you're so wise and so competent. So being invited on this show is also something that brings me very much joy and meaning. And one last thing I want to say is, uh, Africa will never leave, and I have plans of opening up like an outreach kitchen. You have many people, of course, in the areas where I worked that find it difficult to eat good food every day, and it's not very expensive to open like an outreach kitchen. So you can have people cooking food, and then you'll go out to these very poor areas and handing out food. So I would like to kind of start working seriously with that.
Okay.
That's it.
Do you need investors?
Oh, no, but I will never not say yes to that. Definitely, and and also helpers that would like
Yeah,
to see this
to
developing.
work with you
Yeah,
on this matter.
wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
So when do we see this happening?
yeah. So I'm working with a good old friend who I've known since 2011, and he's kind of building contacts right now because working in these countries it can be tricky when you're not
Hmm.
from there because money can flow different places, right? So hopefully, let's see, what are we in May? Maybe September, October, we can start really handing out food.
Wow. Already that soon.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But going from, I mean, from the fishing line where I grew up, how how do you feel? How has the travel been
Mm.
from there and to Africa to corporate and now building perhaps corporate in Africa as well as in as the organization here in or there in Denmark?
Such a good question. First of all, like yourself and like all humans, I believe we are so complex. Like we're like the rainbow. We're able, like we have so many colors, right? And sometimes I think that I myself, I confuse myself. I believe that I have to stay blue, right? Or I have to
Mm,
stay red.
mhm,
Like
mm.
I'm an accountant, then this is what I do. But to me, we are so many colors. Like see yourself now, you're doing this podcast, and then you're working corporately with these leaders doing presentations. And the same for me. I felt very early on that uh, I had so many different things that was important to me. And when
Mm.
you come from a smaller town, um, you know how it is. There's not the same opportunities as in the bigger cities. So I moved quite early. Um, and then the travels, I think as kids, my brother and I, we have traveled a lot with our mom and dad, and they have traveled a lot without us before that. So we have grown up with such a deep rooted curiosity about the world. There's no fear. It's just like, what up? What's up, world? Eh, you know, of course, being aware and being intuitive about your surroundings, but not being scared because people are just people everywhere.
That's a good wisdom.
And we are all just doing the best we can. And
Mm.
sometimes the best we can do is hurtful to others. And when I was living in Uganda, I got very hurt sometimes. I got tricked and robbed and stuff like that. But but I knew that the people who did this, they were in such a desperate situation. It's okay. Then we help them instead of judge them.
Yeah, I don't think everyone would have done that. I mean, it's difficult when you're robbed and hurt and still, I mean, not only turning the other cheek, but to actually help the same people.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And and at the same time, I have many situations where I have, of course, removed myself from the situation because it became physically dangerous or emotionally dangerous,
Mm.
and and I have cut off contact. But sometimes I feel that judging people, and looking back on my own journey in the beginning of traveling to Africa, I have this, as many of us, preconceived idea about who are these people living here. Oh, I need to help them. I need to help them. No, they're strong. They're independent. They're good. You just need to support them with building a business. And the same with the people who tricked me. There's the only person I hurt by judging them is myself in the long run. Oh my God, I sound like Jesus. I'm definitely not. I judge a lot. Oh my God.
No, no, but this is such a good knowledge to share also, and then some, of course, it's a point of view. It's yeah, and I have to ask, because you told me you were hurt in East Africa, but what about in company world? Was that any easier?
In corporate?
Corporate? So sorry.
Yeah, corporate. Yeah. No, I just didn't hear. Yeah, and that's a different kind of hurt, isn't
Mm,
it?
mm,
I think many of us working in corporate might recognize that you kind of need to wear your kind of armor, like you need to gear up,
mm.
because because you can't always be as open, as intuitive, as, for me, as kind of clownish or like human as I would like to be. And I think I was very, very challenged in corporate life on my values, on what I thought would be good for me and
Okay.
for others. And then, of course, uh, working many, many hours, you feel that, right? And then at some point, for me, I felt that I had crossed so many of my own boundaries
Mm.
that I didn't even know where these boundaries were anymore. And then when everything in your life becomes like fluent, uh, for me, I become a little bit anxious, because then who am I? What do I want? Everything becomes blurry, and that was not a very good state of mind.
No, no, I can see that. It, you know, since I'm working with communication, I have to ask, uh, working and communicate in Uganda
Yeah.
and versus communicating in a corporate versus as a musical artist. I mean, what's the difference, or is it any difference, or is it the same? Just in, I mean, what's your?
Hmm. Yeah. What's my take on this? Um, so I guess I want to also throw it a little bit back to you, because it's all about setting, isn't it? Like, I guess you have people who want to achieve something with their communication, um, be powerful, be create followership, create attention, create whatever, whatever you like. So it's all about the intention, for me, when it comes to communication. I think generally for me, um, there was not a lot of big difference between these three arenas, if it was working creatively, working in Africa, or working corporately. That is one thing that I hope that people also know about me. I have been very consistent, um, with how I have communicated, and I have tried to do it in a manner where we could all feel allowed. However, allowed to be in the same space. However, in Africa, in Uganda, there are these wonderful, as in Denmark and Norway, unwritten rules, right? In terms of communication, and also like tonation, pronunciation. Uh, for instance, I don't know if you use that a whole lot here in Scandinavia, but in Uganda, there's a lot of just like eh, eh, mm, ah. These sounds, you could communicate a whole conversation just by using ah, banange, eh, you know. And I really had to get used to this. And then the people in Uganda, they are more like subtle. So when they're like, well done, but there's not a lot of enthusiasm in that way. And I really had to get used to the cultural differences in communication. Um, and I guess in your line of work too, Carl Andre, it is all about then observing, like really listening, really observing what is going on here in my quote unquote audience. And then,
Mm.
yeah, and then
But it's
corporate. Sorry, please.
no, just thinking, and it's of course very difficult to read your audience when you're not used to the culture.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
would take such a longer time. Sorry, and you went on to the corporate, yeah?
No, but I want to say, don't you think that this can also be looked at like our biases? Like, for instance, me, the first time I went into corporate, or the first time when I was 21, I went into Africa, or maybe the first time that your clients became presenters, that um, I had this idea when I went to Africa. I want to save them. I had this idea when I went into corporate. I have to act like such a powerful boy woman,
Mm.
you know?
Mm,
And as a presenter, I have to reach an audience in this way because they think of me as blah, blah, blah.
exactly.
Instead of actually being present, noticing what is actually going on, clearing your mind, clearing your preconceived ideas about. And I think that was these couple of first trips to Africa, something that it really taught me a hard lesson. You know nothing. You know nothing, man. Just look at this. Be humble. What is going on here?
Mm.
Yeah.
We quite often think about the expectations, where we have our own expectations of what the audience or the people we meet has
Mm.
for expectations, and then we think that we have to fulfill them, even though we don't know what they actually are. That just only our own, like you said, biases.
Yeah.
So
How do you go about that when you teach people like this whole thing about biases and expectations?
it depends whether we work one-on-one or we work in groups, and what the purpose of the teaching is, and so on. And I think one of the most interesting things is when I'm working at the university, they hire me in when some of the PhDs are going to, and the international PhDs are going to tell their stories,
Mm-hmm.
tell about the research into the quite often Norwegian investors,
Yeah.
and they do it with their point of view, and they're from India, China, Austria, wherever, and they have to fulfill what they think are the expectations of the investors, and that is really interesting, and that is something we have to talk about. For instance, that it's as we quite often know in Norway, perhaps it's not necessarily what is said, but what is understood that's important, and it doesn't help if you have a time limit of 3 minutes and you are showing 45 slides and saying 2,000 words,
Yeah.
and afterwards you can breathe out and say, yes, I managed it. Okay, so now you know how good I am.
Yeah.
Sorry. you know we it's not like that.
Yeah. And
And
do you find like when you work with international PhD students that uh, that it's difficult for them to kind of um, change their communication? And what do you see is one of the most important things that you can help with?
I like the way this interview has changed focus. No, I think still it depends. That's kind of the word I'm using the most, I think, in my teaching.
Yeah.
It depends, and some of them are understanding it really fast, and some of them are. I don't know if they're actually able to change the mindset at all, because it has to do with the school system where they grew up. In some, like, probably better than me, that in some countries they don't they're even not allowed to ask questions during the lessons.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're growing up with that and not being allowed to ask questions, then you won't be able to change that or think that much yourself, actually.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends where, and of course we could go into discussing which culture has such systems. And actually, is it better what we do? Of course, I think that's better. But,
And I want to say also, as you just say, isn't it about getting people to understand, right? Then
isn't it? Yeah.
right, then we have to adapt to
Mm.
cultural differences and so on. I remember working in Uganda again, and the first couple of years I was like, to the children when I talked to them, I was like, can you please look at me? Look at me, look at me. But they were taught to not look at authorities, right? Don't look at people who are older than you. So they look down always. And I was like, okay, thank you. Yeah,
And how long before you understood that?
long, long, and
Yeah.
that's again why I think it's ultra important for us to, let's say, when we travel, when we meet new people in any setting, just shut up, you know, just listen for a little bit, just observe. And I am definitely no Olympic gold medalist in shutting up and listening. Um, definitely not. But I also see very clearly when I made the mistake of not doing it, and what it can lead to.
Mm. Do you know you also told me that you have a past as a musical artist or a singer.
Ah, yeah, I loved singing a lot.
Okay, where could you tell me a little bit about where did you sing? What kind of music did you sing? Musicals?
Yeah, I think from when I was 9 to when I was 19, I every year I was in a musical and we sang musical songs, and I've always been very fond of these like Whitney Houston. Remember her? Like wonderful big songs, and that's
Mm.
what I wanted to sing the most. It's not because I'm a perfect singer, um, but to many of us, I think that singing is so liberating, and the same
Mm.
with dancing. And I don't know, maybe also when you are a female, a woman, it's easier. Sometimes I think that unfortunately a lot of men can get stuck in this thought about, oh no, I can't sing or I can't dance and then I'm not going to do it. But I think for me it was very liberating. So I've also always been singing a lot. Yeah. Also in Africa, very beautiful singing, you could imagine, right?
Mm. Did you sing with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
because
remember.
that's you remember.
No, I remember I was one day I was walking around the area where I worked with these children, and then I heard all of a sudden these very loud women, almost like cries, ma 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 ma, like very loud. And then I went in to see what it was, and it was this slum area where a certain group of tribal people were living, and one of these women just had a baby. And then there was this wonderful tradition about all the women gathering in a circle, and then they would welcome the child by singing and jumping while they were singing. And you and the listeners know the Maasai people. They are very famous, and they have this tradition of jumping, and this tribe as well, they were crazy good at jumping and singing at the same time. And I'm a little short and I'm also a little round, so I was very bad at this, but it was such a profound experience, just also seeing how communication in a different form, like singing, is just communication is so many things. So yeah, we sang a lot.
And you still do?
Yeah, I still do. Yeah.
Mm.
How about you? Do you sing? When was the
Actually,
last
yes.
time really you do?
It's, I'm a conductor also, so the last time I was singing was yesterday.
Okay, sorry. Wow. Speaking of biases, you sing?
And I teach people singing.
Really? Of course you do.
Yeah, so it's I really enjoy it, and I also think that's so important. And also for me, when I'm working with the public speaking, and of course the part of knowing your voice, feeling your voice, and I mean to be able to use it also as a tool, actually, that's so important. And of course, when you're talking about the singing, like you said, like jumping and singing the powerful music, as you told, that also do something, with the breathing is such a big part about the singing, and all of these things has so many things together. And also, like when you're singing together with someone and feel the vibration, it depends. You can talk about the feelings, or you can talk about the technical, theoretical part about it. It doesn't matter. You feel it, and that's the important thing.
And isn't that such a good point, Karl Andre? Because I'm also thinking sometimes it can be very beneficial for Scandinavians or Western people to get away from the head, like get away from all the
Absolutely.
thoughts, blah 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 blah, and judgments and things to do. And then I think singing helps because it's, as you say, it's a vibration, and we get touched, we get moved, we get angry, we get excited, we get sad. It's a wonderful communication tool, actually.
It is. It is. I think you are to something very important there, and we of course we should all do it more often.
But do you think that there are more men who find it difficult to like feel free in singing and dancing, for instance, than women?
It's probably a cultural thing again, because
Yeah.
it's different depending on where you are. Also, actually, in Norway, depending where in Norway you are, and if you are already. I mean, I grew up where I told I grew up on a folkehøyskole
Oh
with
yeah.
theater, and singing was important. So I mean, since and I had a father that was singing and a conductor. So for me it was kind of natural, even though I didn't actually start to sing before for late. But still, it's such an important thing. And then some of my friends, some of my best friends, they will never ever going to sing.
Right.
I tried to force some of them, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think that maybe was the best idea, but still, the intention, my intention was good.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Actually, the both of us, we were in a place where I tried to get the whole company to sing. I don't know if you remember.
I remember. So Karl Andre and I, we actually used to work together, and at some point he came to our office in Denmark with his colleagues, and he did like a choir singing. I completely forgot, and that was so powerful. I remember actually thinking how you could go from being like separate individuals to creating unity. Like that's also what music can do and singing can do, like creating a sense of belonging, a sense of being together.
Absolutely,
You know?
and I believe in sometimes doing this kind of a shock choir, so so that the people that don't have the time don't get the time to say no. And as long as your voice isn't heard that much, but you only a part of something huger,
How
then
does that
it's
work?
easier.
What is
Sorry.
a shock? What is a shock choir?
No, it was kind of a word I invented right now, actually,
But I love
because
it. Let's
uh,
go with that.
it's the opposite of pop choir, because and I mean a pop-up choir,
Yeah.
because it's when a person makes a group start to sing without them actually knowing it.
Ah,
Sometimes I actually get hired to go to birthday parties or something, and just to make the group sing as a choir, and then they can sing in one voice, or they can get small songs that this group can sing this and this, and if you do it fast enough, and perhaps together with a theater act or something,
yeah.
then it's easy to get people to do it. Than if you tell them, okay, now on Saturday there's going to be a man there teaching you a choir song.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm at the cinema right at that time. No, so it's better if you're not told in advance. And still,
and no, but exactly, like, and then the mind doesn't have time to kind of evaluate or judge yourself, judge what's going on. It's just happening. Boom.
yeah, I think that's good. And actually, sometimes when doing this, when you're working with companies and doing a workshop, and then if you have been working too much theoretical,
Oh, yes.
then saying just stop, everyone stand up.
Yeah.
Okay, do like this, and then can you just repeat after me? And then to get someone to sing like that only for 3 minutes and very easy. That does something to us. I think it does something to our brain. We get more air coming back to our heads.
Yeah.
We start to think better. So many things, and they put this in system and music therapy and so that's also really interesting. Education for I've been talking to many of them, and with that education, that's really interesting as well. And could be something for you also to look into, actually, with all of your background and interest and knowledge. That who knows, because they have put some of these things in system.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good subject as well. We have to take that up one day. Like, for many of us, and maybe more and more, we become such just like a big brain walking on tiny legs. Like, because I guess both with the digital world now expanding, I'm using so much time on my phone. All information is kind of going into the mind, and for me, that was definitely also what made me sick. Like, because the mind cannot understand everything. It cannot, but we kind of, or I did, glorify the mind as, I have to figure this out. Like, I can figure this out if I just do this and this. No, you'll just get yourself more trapped in your mind and mind and mind. I have a very good friend who wrote a song, and one of the lines is, beyond mind, like outside the mind, lies all that is real, is everything that is actually real. And I thought that was so nice, because the mind is a good tool. Like, you can learn with it, you can learn communication styles and presentation, you can book your ticket to Bangkok, but it is not to be glorified as something that can help you feel fulfilled or live a meaningful life. And I think many of us have been taught that becoming smart in this mind and only using that is the way to go, and I don't think it is.
No, because your mind can betray you, and you can be tricked by it and everything. So yeah. But so many, I think that so many people are already so inspired by you, and now we know that you are going to open up the kitchen in Uganda, was it?
Uganda.
As well, yeah.
And
And
you're gonna help.
if I want to help, or people want to help,
Yeah, people are
yeah,
very welcome. For me, when I support, in for instance in Africa, it has become on a very foundational level, like food, for instance, drinks, sending money to Christmas parties, birthday parties, Eid parties, holidays. Because what do I even know? The only thing I know is that people have to eat, drink. That's what I know.
So, are there anything, anywhere on social media or anything else where we can follow and see when it starts? And does it already have a name, or is it a link we can put below?
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Soon to come, I hear.
Soon coming in a SoMe near you. I'll let
Okay.
you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Marie-Louise, thank you very much for really, really inspiring podcast. I'm so happy that you said yes to the invitation and has shared all these interesting thoughts and experiences with us. And I'm looking so much forward to have you come visit us in a podcast later as well.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And Carl Andre, thank you. It's me. I'm so humbled by this invitation, and I really am so grateful. And I know that you know that. And thank you for just staying centered in your work and in your person. You feel you get the people around you to feel safe, and that is ultimately the most important thing.
Thank you. I'm a little embarrassed by all this flattering, but thank you very much. I really do.
know, isn't that something to learn as well?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know, Marie-Louise, we are definitely going to talk later. Thank you.
Thank you.